Hello and welcome to the Capitol Report on NTD Television. I'm Steve Lance. Reactions are pouring in after the White House admitted that classified documents were indeed found at President Biden's previous private office. NTD's Iris Tao has the story, plus some revelations on what the papers may actually contain.
For a second day, still no answer from President Biden. Biden's under fire for classified documents discovered at Penn Biden Center, which is in the building right behind me. The documents were from Biden's time as vice president. They were found by Biden's personal lawyers just 6 days before the midterm elections. But the White House only admitted to it yesterday. The White House told CNN that Biden was unaware what those documents were. But the outlet is reporting today that they included 10 classified documents about Ukraine, Iran, and the UK, and some were labeled as top secret.
Where's the FBI raid?
Republicans and former President Trump are saying there's a double standard, since the FBI raided Trump's Mar-a-Lago home over classified documents.
Biden took classified documents with him and held them for years and criticized former President Trump. I wonder why the press isn't asking the same questions of him as vice president taking classified documents that they were asking President Trump.
And just 4 months ago, Biden said this about documents found at Trump's home.
How that could possibly happen, how anyone could be that irresponsible.
Democrats, meanwhile, are calling such criticism
Republican hypocrisy at its finest. What President Biden did was disclose this to the archives.
Meanwhile, an ethics watchdog group tells NTD the think tank involved here could have funding ties with China.
We have information that the University of Penn has received millions of dollars of Chinese money. We believe some of that went to the Biden Center. Who knows whether there's some documentation of these classified documents that do involve China. So it's really suspicious here, and this calls for a full investigation with subpoena power by the committees.
The Department of Justice is reviewing the found documents, and Republicans are now adding this matter to their growing list of investigations. Reporting in Washington, D.C., Iris Tao, NTD News.
To discuss Biden's classified documents, I just sat down with Idaho Congressman Russ Fulcher. I also had a chance to ask him about the direction of the 118th Congress and the contested process to determine Speaker of the House. Congressman Russ Fulcher, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me on today.
There's news surfacing as we speak where President Biden right now is taking some heat because of the documents that were found in the Biden Penn Center for Diplomacy, which is actually ironically located in this building that we're in right now on the 6th floor. When it comes to taking donations and influence, if you will, from the CCP, how big of an issue do you think this is?
These are things that have been, let's face it, swept under the rug, okay? There's been a very friendly media, very friendly bureaucracies. The intelligence community has been very friendly to the existing administration. And so we don't know what the details of these things are. Even the January 6th Commission was very one-sided. And so now, for the first time, we will get another look at these situations. What are in these documents? Was it appropriate? Was it not? Was there personal gain that came out of some of these things? Hunter Biden, the laptop, all of that. It's been pushed aside. And so I think, frankly, that's one of the things that drove the election outcome the way that it did. I was surprised it wasn't a little bit more of a swing, frankly, but the American people are asking questions just like you did. Is this legitimate? Is it not? What are you going to do about it? Now's our opportunity to do something about it.
So at the very least, when it comes to these documents being found, whether or not they're on the same level of what was found at Mar-a-Lago, there are concerns that there may be a double standard in the way that they're treated versus the former president.
I don't think there's any question about it. Once again, go back to the January 6th Commission. I mean, it was very one-sided. They started with a verdict, said, okay, now we're going to go substantiate our verdict. The Biden laptop, we know for a fact now, FBI knew about it before the election and constrained information about that. We now know, thank you Elon Musk, that that people were suppressed, trying to expose that. And so with all these ingredients coming to light, of course there's a double standard. I mean, we felt that here on the Republican side, media-wise, access to information-wise, restrictions on how we communicate and censorship with some of our communications versus some of our colleagues on the Democrat side. The double standard is no secret, at least to me and to our colleagues on the Republican side.
Congressman, I want to ask you about the rules package that was negotiated by members of the House Freedom Caucus with Kevin McCarthy. Some, when the vote came last night, said that it potentially might not go through because they thought McCarthy maybe gave away too much. In the end, it did. What are your thoughts?
It's interesting because I think we've been conditioned to the Nancy Pelosi way of doing business, which is a very heavy-handed speaker. And the rules that she had with the support of her conference were very empowering to the speaker and, quite frankly, minimizing to most members of Congress. Even from what I understand, under Speaker Boehner, it was a lot more control in the speaker's gavel. But with these new rules, it kind of goes back to it was even pre-Boehner as Speaker. And, frankly, I think that's just a good thing because each member has a little bit more ability to maneuver, has a little bit more say in terms of amendments, the actions on the floor, a little bit more notice when we get bills that we want to go through, especially big ones. Overall, I think is a very good thing, and we'll get used to that, I think, real quick.
Well, now that you are officially, in power, the House GOP, what are some of the top things that you think have you most excited that you guys are going to push?
It's those things, at least in my home state of Idaho, that I get questioned all the time about. And it's also things that were involved with the commitment to America, if you recall that. Border security, acting on that and making sure that we've got a Homeland Security that's funded and can do their job. The 87,000 IRS agents that got passed through here a few months ago, that was a very, very disheartening thing to certainly my constituents, and I think across the country. So the agenda to defund that or pull the plug on the funding was just huge. Concerns about China. They've had a very aggressive posture for a long time, and now to put some strategic commission in place to take a look at not just competitiveness, but also the maneuvers that they're making and the aggression going on there, and what's the appropriate response from the U.S. For those of us who are pro-life, and I definitely fall in that category, the born alive part of the agenda, huge deal. Why shouldn't infants have the same rights as children when it comes to the right to live once they're born? Now, these are things that a lot of us, at least in the state of Idaho, take for granted that, hey, of course you would want to do that, but Congress and all of our previous wisdom have taken actions against that. So those are just a few of the things. Energy production is another one. Here we are, all of us are paying astronomical prices on fuel and energy resources. So okay, let's get into that. Let's improve the access back on federal lands, get our energy autonomy back, our self-sufficiency. Those are primary planks with this agenda coming up. All of them are very, very good and can't happen soon enough.
Congressman Russ Fulcher, thank you so much for joining us.
My pleasure.
Day 2 of the 118th Congress, and both Republicans and Democrats are opposing the Chinese Communist Party's malign values and use of economic coercion for global influence. Lawmakers created a bipartisan committee on China today. NTD's Melina Wisecup brings us more from Capitol Hill. So, Melina, what's the purpose of this new committee, and what are the lawmakers telling you about it?
So essentially, this new select committee on China will be made up of about 16 members from both parties. So while the main focus of this committee will be looking at the economic relations between the U.S. and China, it will also look at human rights issues. And if you really think about it, the human rights issues and the economic issues between these two countries really go hand in hand. Like one member mentioned on the floor today, that's because there are some U.S. businesses who are investing in China where forced labor is occurring. hearing. So they said they will be investigating issues like this. It's important to note that this committee will only have investigative jurisdiction. They will not have legislative jurisdiction. We caught up with some of the lawmakers who will be sitting on this committee to find out specifically what they will be looking at. One of them told me it's important to not only look at how the U.S. can compete with China on the domestic front, but also look at how the U.S. can use our economic influence around the world to deter the Chinese Communist Party's influence on the global scale.
Why are we not partnering with Japan, South Korea, Australia, New Zealand, Indonesia, the Philippines? They are craving us. This select committee is going to focus on that.
Chinese students studying at our universities and targets Americans of Chinese descent. And it is here at home where thousands of Americans are poisoned each year by fentanyl precursors manufactured in China. We need to have a united front here in Congress to counter the Chinese Communist Party.
Now, this committee was created on a bipartisan basis on a vote of 365 to 65. So there were 65 members opposing this. And although it was bipartisan, the members who did oppose it, we spoke with one of them, and he said that he's not opposed to the idea of creating a strategy in regards to China, but he says he believes that this should be done through the already formed Foreign Affairs Committee.
If you don't vote for it, you sound like you're in favor of China, you're in favor of the Communist Party. Well, I'm not in favor of any communist, and I'm certainly not in favor of the Chinese communists, but I'm also in favor of fairness.
And he and other lawmakers were very adamant about making a point both on the floor and afterwards when they were speaking with me about the need to make a distinction between the Chinese Communist Party and the Chinese people. Here's a look.
To the careful way that it was, the words were written in the resolution, that it's talking about the Chinese Communist Party, not the Chinese people.
Our concern is not with the Chinese people or the rich culture of Chinese history. Our grievances, our concerns relate specifically to the authoritarian regime in Beijing, which does not, we believe, does not represent the hopes, aspirations of the Chinese people.
And while the creation of this committee was a very bipartisan one, another one that was created today was not. That is the subcommittee to investigate the weaponization of the federal government. This would look at issues as to how the federal government collects information about citizens or may take action against American citizens. Democrats today calling this committee a tinfoil hat committee, saying that they still plan to put members on it to have some representation, although they don't necessarily agree with it.
Thank you for watching the Capitol Report. If you want to see our full broadcast, check us out at epochtv.com.